should be attracted to those which lead to salvation. One should eat very frugally and should always remain secluded so that he can achieve the highest perfection of life. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. It is recommended herein that religious practice for economic development or the satisfaction of sense desires should be avoided. Religious practices should be executed only to gain freedom from the clutches of material nature. It is stated in the beginning of Srimad Bhagavatam that the topmost religious practice is that by which one can attain to the transcendental devotional service of the Lord. Without reason or cause, such religious practice is never hampered by any impediments, and by its performance, one actually becomes satisfied. Here, this is recommended as moksha dharma, religious practice for salvation, or transcendence of the clutches of material contamination. Generally, people execute religious practices for economic development or sense gratification, but that is not recommended for one who wants to advance in yoga. The next important phrase is metta medhyadanam, which means that one should eat very frugally. It is recommended in the Vedic literatures that a yogi should eat very frugally. It is recommended in the Vedic literatures that a yogi eat only half what he desires according to his hunger. If one is so hungry that he could devour 1 pound of foodstuffs, then instead of eating 1 pound, he should consume only half a pound and supplement this with 4 ounces of water. Interesting. 4 ounces of water. 1/4 of the stomach should be left empty for passage of air in the stomach. If one eats in this manner, he will avoid indigestion and disease. The yogi should eat in this way, as recommended in the Srimad Bhagavatam and all other standard scriptures. The yogi should live in a secluded place where his yoga practice will not be disturbed. Okay, so this is all good advice by Srila Prabhupada and, of course, the Srimad Bhagavatam. We'll go to the next one. Text 4. One should practice nonviolence and truthfulness. Should avoid thieving and be satisfied with possessing as much as he needs for his maintenance. He should abstain from sex life, perform austerity, be clean, study the Vedas, and worship the supreme form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The word Purusharkshanam in this verse means worshiping the Supreme Personality of Godhead, especially the form of Lord Krishna. In Bhagavad Gita, it is confirmed by Arjuna that Krishna is the original Purusha, or personality of Godhead. Purusham Shasvatam. Therefore, in yoga practice, one not only must concentrate his mind on the person of Krishna, but must also worship the form or deity of Krishna daily. A brahmachari practices celibacy, controlling his sex life. One cannot enjoy unrestricted sex life and practice yoga. This is rascaldom. So-called yogis advertise that one could go on enjoying as one likes and simultaneously become a yogi, but this is totally unauthorized. It is very clearly explained here that one must observe celibacy. Brahmacharyam means that one leads his life simply in relationship with Brahman or in full Krishna consciousness. Those who are too addicted to sex life cannot observe the regulations which will lead them to Krishna consciousness. Sex life should be restricted to persons who are married, a person whose sex life is restricted in marriage is also called a brahmachari. The word astayam is also very important for a yogi. Astayam means to refrain from theft. In the broader sense, everyone who accumulates more than he needs is a thief. In the broader sense, everyone who accumulates more than he needs is a thief. According to spiritual communism, one cannot possess more than he needs for his personal maintenance. That is the law of nature. Anyone who accumulates more money or more possessions than he needs is called a thief. And one who simply accumulates wealth without spending for sacrifice or for worship of the person of God is a great thief. Swadhyaya means reading the authorized Vedic scriptures, even if one is not Krishna conscious and is practicing the yoga system. He must read standard Vedic literatures in order to understand. Performance of yoga alone is not sufficient. Narottama Dasa Thakura, a great devotee and acharya in the Gaudiya Vaishnava Sampradaya, says that all spiritual activities should be understood from three sources, namely saintly persons, saintly persons, sorry, standard scriptures, and the spiritual master. These three guides are very important for progress in spiritual life. The spiritual master prescribes standard literature for the prosecution of the yoga of devotional service. And he himself speaks only from scriptural reference. Therefore, standard scriptures, therefore, reading standard scriptures is necessary for executing yoga. Practicing yoga without reading the standard literatures is simply a waste of time. Wow. Harivilas. Text 5. One must observe silence, acquire steadiness by practicing different yogic postures, control the breathing of the vital air, withdraw the senses from sense objects, and thus concentrate the mind on the heart. The purport. The yogic practice in general and hatha yoga in particular are not ends in themselves. They are means to the end of attaining steadiness. First, one must be able to sit properly, and then the mind and attention will become steady enough for practicing yoga. Gradually, one must control the circulation of vital air, and with such control, he will be able to withdraw the senses from sense objects. In the previous verse, it is stated that one must observe celibacy. The most important aspect of sense control is controlling sex life. That is called brahmacharya. By practicing the different sitting postures and controlling this vital air, one can control and restrain the senses from unrestricted sense enjoyment. Text number 6. Fixing the vital air and the mind in one of the 6 circles of vital air circulation within the body, thus concentrating one's mind on the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead is called samadhi or samadhana of the mind. Purport. There are 6 circles of vital air circulation within the body. The first circle is within the belly. The second circle is in the area of the heart. The third is in the area of the lungs. The fourth is in the palate. The fifth is between the eyebrows. And the highest, the 6th circle, is above the brain. One has to fix his mind and the circulation of the vital air, and thus think of the transcendental pastimes of the Supreme Lord. It is never mentioned that one should concentrate on the impersonal or void. It is clearly stated, Vaikuntha Lila. Lila means pastime. Unless the absolute truth, the personality of Godhead, has transcendental activities, where is the scope for thinking of these pastimes? It is through the processes of devotional service, chanting and hearing of the pastimes of the Supreme Personality of Godhead that one can achieve this concentration. As described in the Srimad Bhagavatam, the Lord appears and disappears according to his relationships with different devotees. The Vedic literatures contain many narrations of the Lord's pastimes, including the Battle of Kurukshetra and historical facts relating to the life and precepts of devotees like Prahlad Maharaja, Dhruva Maharaja, and Ambarish Maharaja. One need only concentrate his mind on one such narration and become always absorbed in its thought. And then he will be in samadhi. Samadhi is not an artificial bodily state. It is a state achieved when the mind is virtually absorbed in thoughts of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Text 7. By these processes or any other true process, one must control the contaminated, unbridled mind, which is always attracted by material enjoyment, and thus fix himself in thought of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Attire Anyascha, the general yoga process, entails observing the rules and regulations, practicing the different sitting postures, concentrating the mind on the vital circulation of the air, and then thinking of the Supreme Personality Godhead in his Vaikuntha pastimes. This is the general process of yoga. This same concentration can be achieved by other recommended processes, and therefore, anyascha, other methods, also can be applied. The essential point is that the mind, which is contaminated by material attraction, has to be bridled and concentrated on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It cannot be fixed on something void or impersonal. For this reason, so-called yoga practices of voidism and impersonalism are not recommended in any standard yoga shastra. The real yogi is the devotee because his mind is always concentrated on the pastimes of Lord Krishna. Therefore, Krishna consciousness is the topmost yoga system. Jai Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Text number 8. I'm sorry. After controlling one's mind and sitting postures, one should spread a seat in a secluded and sanctified place. Sit there in an easy posture, keeping the body erect, and practice breath control. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. Sitting in an easy posture is called swasti samasana. It is recommended in the yoga scripture that one should put the soles of the feet between the two thighs and ankles and sit straight. That posture will help one to concentrate his mind on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This very process is also recommended in Bhagavad Gita 6th chapter. It is further suggested that one sit in a secluded, sanctified spot. The seat should consist of deerskin and kusha grass topped with cotton. Yeah, when you sleep on the kusha grass, then no snake will come near you. Okay, text number 9. The yogi should clear the passage of vital air by breathing in the following manner. First, he should inhale very deep, then hold the breath in, and finally exhale. Or reversing the process, the yogi can first exhale, then hold the breath outside, and finally inhale. This is done so that the mind may become steady and free from external disturbance. Report by Srila Prabhupada. These breathing exercises are performed to control the mind and fix it on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Savai Mana Krishna Padaravindayo, the devotee Ambarish Maharaj fixed his mind on the lotus feet of Krishna 24 hours a day. The process of Krishna consciousness is to chant Hare Krishna and to hear the sound attentively so that the mind is fixed upon the transcendental vibration of Krishna's name, which is non-different from Krishna, the personality. Well, okay, this just validates the fact that one should not silently chant Hare Krishna. One should chant the Hare Krishna mantra with the conviction that it should be loud enough to hear oneself and also for someone that is near him. One should not chant silently. The real purpose of controlling the mind by the prescribed method of clearing the passage of the life air is achieved immediately if one fixes his mind directly on the lotus feet of Krishna. The Hatha Yoga system or breathing system is especially recommended for those who are very absorbed in the concept of bodily existence. But one who can perform the simple process of chanting Hare Krishna can fix the mind more easily. Okay, there it is. Engaging in, let's say, Hatha Yoga is not really, let's say, the best method of meditation. And that's why it says here, but one who can perform the simple process of chanting Hare Krishna can fix the mind more easily. What is that simple process of chant? Simple process is chanting Hare Krishna mantra, and it should be chanted not silently, but loud enough that one can hear, and also people not far away from him can also hear. 3 different activities are recommended for clearing the passage of breath: Puraka, Kumbhaka, and Rechaka. Inhaling the breath is called Puraka. Sustaining it within is called Kumbhaka. And finally, exhaling it is called Rechaka. These recommended processes can also be performed in the reverse order. After exhaling, one can keep the air outside for some time and then inhale. The nerves through which inhalation and exhalation are conducted are technically called Ida and Pingala. The ultimate purpose of clearing the Ida and Pingala passages is to divert the mind from material enjoyment. As stated in Bhagavad Gita, one's mind is his enemy, and one's mind is also his friend. Its position varies according to the different dealings of the living entity. If we divert our mind to thoughts of material enjoyment, then our mind becomes an enemy. And if we concentrate our mind on the lotus feet of Krishna, then our mind is a friend. By the yoga system of Puraka, Kumbhaka, and Rechaka, or by directly fixing the mind on the sound vibration of Krishna or on the form of Krishna, the same purpose is achieved. In Bhagavad Gita 8.8, it is said that one must practice the breathing exercise, Abhyasa Yoga Yuktena. By virtue of these processes of control, the mind cannot wander to external thoughts. Cetasa Nanyagamina. Thus, one can fix his mind constantly on the Supreme Personality of Godhead and can attain Him, meaning Krishna. Practicing the yoga system of exercise and breath control is very difficult for a person in this age. And therefore, Lord Chaitanya recommended Kirtaniya Sadahari. One should always chant the holy name of the Supreme Lord, Krishna, because Krishna is the most suitable name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The name of Krishna and the Supreme Person Krishna are non-different. Therefore, if one concentrates his mind on hearing and chanting Hare Krishna, the same result is achieved. Amen. Thank you, Prabhupada. That makes everything very clear and rather doable. It's not something that is impossible to do. So let's look at this again. It said, in Bhagavad Gita 8.8, it is said that one must practice the breathing exercise, Abhyasa Yoga Yuktena. By virtue of these processes of control, the mind cannot wander to external thoughts, Cetasya Nanya Damina. Thus, one can fix his mind constantly on the Supreme Personality Godhead and can attain Yati, Him. Practicing a yoga system of exercise and breath control is very difficult for a person in this age. And therefore, Lord Chaitanya recommended Kirtaniya Sada Hari. One should always chant the holy name of the Supreme Lord, Krishna, because Krishna is the most suitable name of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The name Krishna and the Supreme Person Krishna are non-different. Therefore, if one concentrates his mind on hearing and chanting Hare Krishna, the same result is achieved. Haribo, or glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Now, this is the real explanation of how to practice Krishna consciousness today in this modern age and not become, let's say, involved in doing things that are very difficult or almost impossible to do in Kali Yuga. Okay, verse number 10. The yogis who practice such breathing exercises are very soon freed from all mental disturbances, just as gold, when put into fire and fanned with air, becomes free from all impurities. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. The process of purifying the mind is also recommended by Lord Chaitanya. He says that one should chant Hare Krishna. He says further, Param Vijayate, all glories to Sri Krishna Sankirtana. All glories are given to the chanting of the holy names of Krishna because as soon as one begins the process of chanting, the mind becomes purified. Chaita darpana marjanam. By chanting the holy name of Krishna, one is cleansed of the dirt that accumulates in the mind. One can purify the mind either by the breathing process or by the chanting process. Well, we should choose the chanting process. Just as one can purify gold by putting it in a fire and fanning it with a bellows. A bellows is something that uh, does the same thing as breathing, but it is something that's constructed, and it can breathe in and out. It's not a living thing, but it's let's say, a tool that mimics breath. Okay, text 11. By practicing the process of pranayama, one can eradicate the contamination of his physiological condition. And by concentrating mind, one can become free from all sinful activities. By restraining the senses, one can free himself from material association. And by meditating on the Supreme Personality of Godhead, one can become free from the three modes of material attachment. Purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. According to Ayurvedic medical science, the three items, kapha, pitta, and vayu, phlegm, bile, and air, maintain the physiological condition of the body. Modern medical science does not accept this physiological analysis as valid, but the ancient Ayurvedic process of treatment is based upon these items. Ayurvedic treatment concerns itself with the cause of these three elements, which are mentioned in many places in the Bhagavatam as the basic conditions of the body. Here, it is recommended that by practicing the breathing process of pranayama, one can be released from contamination created by the principal physiological elements. By concentrating the mind, one can become free from sinful activities. And by withdrawing the senses, one can free himself from material association. Ultimately, one has to meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead in order to be elevated to the transcendental position where he is no longer affected by the three modes of nature. It is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that one who engages himself in unalloyed devotional service at once becomes transcendental to the three modes of material nature and immediately realizes his identification with Brahman. Saganan samatitaitan Brahma bhuyaya kalpate. For every item in the yoga system, there is a parallel activity in bhakti yoga. But the practice of bhakti yoga is easier for the sage. What was introduced by Lord Chaitanya is not a new interpretation. Bhakti yoga is a feasible process that begins with chanting and hearing. Bhakti yoga and other yogas have as their ultimate goal the same personality Godhead, but one is practical and the others are difficult. One can purify his physiological condition by concentration and by restraint of the senses. Then he can fix his mind upon the Supreme Personality of Godhead. This is called samadhi. Okay, so over and over again, Prabhupada is uh, explaining the what you might call traditional process, and then but recommending the process that Lord Chaitanya, uh, let's say, established. Now, whatever Lord Chaitanya established is not something uh, very complicated. He made the practice of Krishna consciousness practical and doable in this age of Kali Yuga. To try and make people Krishna consciousness by the traditional process, well, let's put it like this: very few people would be able to do it in a sustained way. But the uh, adaptation that Lord Chaitanya is advocating, Kirtaniya Sadahari, that is possible. Chanting a Hare Krishna Mahamantra constantly, that will keep the mind focused on Krishna without the more uh, complicated process of the so-called yoga postures and the breathing exercises, etc. Although that is also a bona fide process of meditation, you can see it's not really recommended by Lord Chaitanya. Why? Because what he is recommending is doable in the age of Kali Yuga. What was previously recommended would only be able to be done by a few people. Most people would not be able to do the more, let's say, complicated process that was recommended previously. Okay, did Lord Chaitanya deviate from the classical way of meditating? No, because the goal is to become Krishna conscious. So there are different ways to become Krishna conscious. Lord Chaitanya is advocating the most doable way to become Krishna conscious in this age of Kali Yuga. Therefore, Prabhupada says, ultimately, one has to meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead in order to be elevated to the transcendental position where he is no longer affected by the three modes of material nature. It is also confirmed in Bhagavad Gita that one who engages himself in unalloyed devotional service at once becomes transcendental to the three modes of material nature and immediately realizes his identification with Brahman, meaning the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Sagunam samatityaitan brahmabhuyaya kalpate. For every item in the yoga system, there is a parallel activity in bhakti yoga. Okay, now that is a very significant statement. For every item in the yoga system, there is a parallel activity in bhakti yoga. But the practice of bhakti yoga is easier for this age. Okay, now this we should pay a lot of attention to this statement. For every item in the yoga system, there is a parallel activity in bhakti yoga, but the practice of bhakti yoga is easier for this age. What was introduced by Lord Chaitanya is not a new interpretation. Bhakti yoga is a feasible process that begins with chanting and hearing. Bhakti yoga and other yogas have as their ultimate goal the same personality of Godhead, but one is practical the other is difficult. One has to purify his physiological condition by concentration and by restraint of the senses. Then he can fix his mind upon the Supreme Personality Godhead. That is called samadhi. Okay, so this is very important information. It sort of makes the method of Krishna consciousness, or the recommended method of Krishna consciousness, more, it puts more emphasis on that than the more traditional method of becoming Krishna conscious. So, the whole purpose of yoga practice is to purify one's physiological condition by concentration and by restraint of the senses. Then he can fix his mind upon the Supreme Personality Godhead. That is called samadhi. But one can do the same thing by constantly chanting the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. That's why it says, for every item in the yoga system, there is a parallel activity in bhakti yoga. But the practice of bhakti yoga is easier for this age. What was introduced by Lord Chaitanya is not a new interpretation. Bhakti yoga is a feasible process, meaning something that you can actually do, that begins with chanting and hearing. Bhakti yoga and other yogas have as their ultimate goal the same personality of Godhead, but one is practical and the others are difficult. One has to purify his physiological condition by concentration and by restraint of the senses. Then he can fix his mind upon the Supreme Personality Godhead. That is called samadhi. Okay, now that's a very important verse. It sort of summarizes what's been said previously, but with more emphasis. So, in other words, Bhakti Yoga, as explained by Lord Chaitanya, it's this statement: for every item in the yoga system, there is a parallel activity in Bhakti Yoga, but the practice of Bhakti Yoga is easier for this age. What was introduced by Lord Chaitanya is not a new interpretation. Bhakti Yoga is a feasible process that begins with chanting and hearing. Bhakti Yoga and other yogas have as their ultimate goal the same personality Godhead, but one is practical and the others are difficult. One has to purify his physiological condition by concentration and by restraint of the senses. Then he can fix his mind upon the Supreme Personality Godhead. That is called samadhi. Now, that's a very important statement. So we should pay attention to this. This is Canto 3, Chapter 28, Text 11. Okay, Text 12. When the mind is perfectly purified by this process of yoga, one should concentrate on the tip of the nose with half-closed eyes and see the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Purport by Srila Prabhupada. It is clearly mentioned here that one has to meditate upon the expansion of Vishnu. The word custom refers to Paramatma, the expansion of Vishnu. Bhagavata refers to Lord Vishnu, the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The Supreme Godhead is Krishna. From him comes the first expansion, Baladeva. And from Baladeva comes Sankarshan, Aniruddha, and many other forms, followed by the Purusha avatars. As mentioned in the previous verses, Purusharkanam, this Purusha is represented as the Paramatma or Supersoul. A description of the Supersoul upon whom one must meditate will be given in the following verses. In this verse, it is clearly stated that one must meditate by fixing the vision on the tip of the nose and concentrating one's mind on the kala, or the plenary expansion of Vishnu. Okay, so Prabhupada does not, let's say, reject the traditional process of meditation, but he explains it in detail and then explains that what Lord Chaitanya has recommended in this age of Kali. In other words, in the age of Kali Yuga, the recommended way to attain perfection in practice yoga is by chanting Hare Krishna, Maha Mantra, and engaging in practical devotional service. So when you say practical devotional service, it's not implying that one should meditate silently. Practical devotional service means that in the association of devotees, one engages in devotional activities, chanting, dancing, feasting, etc. So uh, even when Lord Chaitanya appeared, he was criticized by the more traditional yogis. They thought that he was a sentimentalist, uh, chanting and dancing in the streets, and they tried to convince him that he should stop doing that and take up the process of meditation, silent meditation, and but Lord Chaitanya uh, was able to convince the more conventional yogis that the yoga dharma in this present age is to chant Hare Krishna and dance and be jolly or happy and spread Krishna consciousness by the process of Harinama Sankirtan, which is all about chanting and dancing and meditating on Krishna by this process that is full of happiness, which is joyfully performed. So, does that mean the other process is not joyfully performed? Well, it's much more restricted, whereas the process of Lord Chaitanya is not so restricted. It gives a person a chance to chant, dance, and feast. This might be looked upon as something for lower class people to do, but actually, uh, it is the recommended way of Lord Chaitanya. So, therefore, if someone wants to do the more traditional way, okay, they can try it, but very, very few people would be successful in doing it. However, anybody can engage in chanting Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, dancing, and feasting. Anyone can do that, and it's done happily. So why try and do something that is very difficult in this present age. The recommended way in this age to make spiritual advancement is to chant Hare Krishna, dance, feast, and continually keep the mind focused on Krishna in that way, rather than silent meditation or uh, being or meditating in a solitary way. Uh, in Krishna consciousness, there is the emphasis put on association with other devotees who are who are strictly following Krishna consciousness. It does not recommend uh, staying away from association of pure devotees. Oftentimes, yoga should be performed in a private place away from people. That was the recommended process previously. However, in Krishna consciousness, what is emphasized more is associating with pure devotees, not avoiding their association. So therefore, it looks like something different, but it's not actually different because it's the attempt to attain the same goal, but not by a more severe process, but by a more direct and easier process. So, what could be more easier than chanting Hare Krishna, dancing, and feasting, and engaging in practical devotional service? In other words, always keeping the mind and the senses engaged in Krishna's service rather than silent meditation individually in some secluded place. So one does not associate, in Krishna consciousness, one does not associate with unholy people, but one is recommended to associate with genuine devotees. The traditional system would be to avoid association with everybody, but in Krishna consciousness, we don't have to avoid the association of everyone, but we limit our association with associating with genuine devotees who are practicing Krishna consciousness strictly. Okay, all right. So, are there any questions? I know we covered a lot of different verses, but it's important. These are very important verses. Why? Because what's being explained is what Lord Chaitanya recommended for the age of Kali. He made things doable, not things that would be only doable by a few people. Everybody can be Krishna conscious by the recommendations of of Lord Chaitanya. So we have to understand. Of course, Lord Chaitanya was criticized for chanting and dancing in the streets and associating with the common people and helping them to make spiritual advancement by the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra, chanting, dancing, and feasting, and hearing lectures by bona fide devotees. What's very interesting also is Prabhupada says Lord Chaitanya never preached in public. In public, he would chant, dance, and feast, but he would only preach to those, let's say, special devotees who already had attained control of their mind and senses and were able to focus strictly on what the Lord was saying. But in public, Lord Chaitanya never preached. He just chanted and danced and gave out a lot of prasadam. He only preached to confidential devotees. Now that's interesting. However, in Kali Yuga, the devotees are taking a risk by chanting and I'm not chanting, but taking a risk by preaching to everyone. In other words, trying to give everyone a chance to be Krishna conscious. That is a risky process, but the devotees are willing to take that risk, knowing what the purpose of Lord Chaitanya is. What is his purpose? He wants everyone to be Krishna conscious. So he doesn't want devotees to ignore the mass of people who are suffering. However, it is risky to do that. But if we do that, just like Lord Harivilas Thakur was preaching openly, and unfortunately, he was beaten and left for being dead. But he didn't die. And he was like a little bit, confused because he was beaten very severely and he should have died. Any normal person would die, but he didn't die. So he was curious how come he didn't die. So he went to see Lord Chaitanya after he was beaten severely. And the Lord showed him that all the beating that he received was actually done, or was actually uh, uh, done to Lord Chaitanya. Lord Chaitanya showed his back, and his back was full of all different types of, let's say, uh,
Lashes.
lashes, yes. And therefore, Lord Chaitanya protected Haridas Thakur. So, when it says that the Lord will protect you, it means that although you may be suffering in different ways, the Lord will lessen the actual suffering that you undergo, and He will protect you by His own personal, let's say, uh, what you would call uh, intervention, so that you don't really suffer. If there's any suffering, He'll take the suffering. You will not suffer. Okay, so this is a little bit hard to understand, but it was proven in the case of Haridas Thakur, who, when he went after being beaten terribly, he goes to see Lord Chaitanya and he sees that all the different striking were actually on the back of Lord Chaitanya, and that's why Haridas Thakur did not die. So this is transcendental knowledge of the promise of Lord Chaitanya and the, let's say, bona fide devotees that Konteya Pratijanihi Nami Bhakta Pranashyati declared boldly, Arjuna, to the whole world that my devotee will not perish. So that statement is enough for someone who has, a good, sharp intelligence to free them from fear and anxiety and take up honestly and wholeheartedly the process of Sankirtan and Harinam Sankirtan as the recommended process in this age for making spiritual advancement. When Lord Chaitanya went out in the streets, chanted Hare Krishna, uh, he was criticized by the more conventional yogis and devotees, not devotees, but yogis, for doing that. But he said, well, my guru told me that I'm less intelligent. Therefore, he recommended that I chant Hare Krishna openly and engage in chanting, dancing, and feasting. But no, Lord Chaitanya was not less intelligent. and his guru was not telling him to do something like that, chanting, dancing, and feasting, because he was less intelligent. It is the recommended way in Kali Yuga of Krishna consciousness. In other words, chanting, dancing, feasting, regularly hearing lectures by devotees, and in all ways being engaged in practical devotional service. So one time there was a rat that fell into uh, uh, what do you call
Well,
a well, and all these brahmanas came and they performed mantras. After they finished their mantras, they went away, and then a person said, "Well, now you finished the mantras, but who's going to go into the well and pick up the rat and take it and bring it up from the well?" So exactly, that's the point. Yeah, you can say many mantras and engage in silent meditation away from people. But ultimately, who's going to go out and preach to all the people who are suffering, and not just for your own edification, but to help others also become Krishna conscious? So Lord Chaitanya's process is chanting and dancing in public, and also feasting and giving everybody a chance, even if they are sinful people, the chance to become Krishna conscious. So therefore, the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra and the chanting of it in public is Lord Chaitanya's process to help all living entities become Krishna conscious. All living entities means the trees, the birds, the bees, everybody becomes benefited by hearing the chanting of the Hare Krishna Maha Mantra. So this is the more universal process that is all encompassing and should be practiced by devotees. We shouldn't think that, well, who cares about liberating the birds and the bees and so forth? Well, Lord Chaitanya cared about it. That's why he chanted in public. But he preached only in privacy. In other words, in public, he performed Sankirtan. In privacy, with devotees who were serious, very serious about hearing, he preached. So, but today, we're taking a risk by going out in the public and preaching. But we're taking that risk because we know what the purpose of Lord Chaitanya is. He wants everyone to become Krishna conscious. So we'll take that risk. So Haridas Thakur took that risk, but he was beaten very severely. But he did not actually die, and he did not actually suffer. And Prabhupada also mentions this in the case of Jesus Christ. He was crucified on the cross, but Prabhupada has explained that he did not really suffer. Because he was Krishna conscious, and he it looked like he was suffering terribly. Obviously, if people put these big nails through your palms and your feet and so forth, and hang you on a cross in the scorching heat all day long. It looks like you would be really suffering. But Krishna protected Jesus Christ, and he did not actually suffer, although it looked like it. Uh, he tolerated that very harsh treatment and came out victorious. He resurrected from the dead, and he preached for 40 days after his crucifixion and so-called death. And then he went back to Godhead. So we should not be afraid or hesitant to preach. And also to dance and chant in public. A lot of people would be, let's say, intimidated or feel intimidated by going out in the public and chanting, but not devotees. In fact, they strive for the chanting and dancing in public because that way they're reaching many, many people. And they preach in public, and they give out prasadam in public, and they invite others to chant and dance with them. So this is a very important, let's say, process of Krishna consciousness in this most difficult age of Kali Yuga. Okay, so I think we'll stop right there. Are there any questions anyone would like to ask? Any question?
Any questions online?
Hare Krishna, I have a question.
Yes.
Um, so I get confused between the two when we say one should chant and then the other one about our devotional service. So I'm not sure if I should be chant or if I should be preaching or not.
Okay. Well, that's a good question. You see, what Prabhupada is doing when he writes his purports, he explains the traditional way previously when people tried to become Krishna conscious. And then he also explains Lord Chaitanya's very practical way of performing Harinam Sankirtan in public and distributing massive amounts of prasadam and dancing and not necessarily like preaching. Lord Chaitanya preached in private to uh, special devotees, but in public, he simply performed Sankirtan and distributed large amounts of prasadam. Now, does that mean we should not preach? No, but we have to be careful when we preach because we're preaching to people who are, living sinful lives. That means that they can, uh, they're not really super, let's say, inspired by someone who preaches. So therefore, our process is chanting and dancing and feasting. So when we go out, that's exactly what we do. We chant, we dance, and we feast, and we invite people to have nice prasadam and maybe get a book and also get an invitation to come to the temple. So it's in the age of Kali, most people are not interested in the spiritual life. However, the fact is that everybody, Krishna is present in the heart of every living entity. So when Lord Chaitanya saw Jagai and Madai, they were drunkards and they were women hunters and they were engaged in illicit sex. And they thought, well, if I can make these two very, very fallen people Krishna conscious, then this would help in inspiring other people to become Krishna conscious. So the Lord Chaitanya took the risk of preaching Jagai and Madai. And at first, they ridiculed him and struck him, or one of the brothers threw a broken uh, uh, what do you call that vase uh, and struck him, and he was bleeding rather profusely. And Lord Chaitanya got so upset when he heard this. He went immediately where the two brothers were and where the persons were that threw the chard or that broken piece of clay. Uh, and he was going to kill them. But then the devotees that were, or the devotee that was injured, he fell down at the lotus feet of Lord Chaitanya and pleaded, "Please, my dear Lord, you have come to liberate all souls. And if you kill this Jagai and Madai, that would not, uh, let's say, achieve your purpose in Kali Yuga of liberating or helping all these fallen souls. So please be merciful to them." So instead of killing them, he uh, basically warned them, if they stop engaging in sinful activities, then they will be protected by the mercy of Lord Chaitanya. But if they ever continue, then he would kill them. He was going to kill them, but the devotees that were actually, or the devotee that was actually injured, he pleaded with the Lord. He said, "You have come to save the living entities, not to kill them. So please forgive these two brothers and give them Krishna consciousness." And that's what Lord Chaitanya did. So even if we get injured by people, like I remember one time on Sankirtan, we went in this neighborhood where uh, there were butchers, and at one point, this one big guy who was a butcher came running toward us, and he grabbed me, and he put his knife on my neck, and he was laughing, and he was asking his friend, "Should I cut his head off?" Now, this actually happened, and well, obviously, I'm still here, so he didn't cut my head off. But he had his knife. I remember he grabbed me. He was a very big, strong guy. He grabbed me and put his butcher's knife on my neck. And he asked his friend, "Should I cut his head off?" So sometimes, you go in certain neighborhoods that are very dangerous, and there are people that are capable of killing you very easily. But Krishna protected me, and this guy, instead of cutting my head off, he just simply put his knife on my neck and held me like that for a little while, and then let me go. That actually happened. I'm not exaggerating. We went in a neighborhood where there are uh, butchers, and the public can come and buy meat that the butchers cut, and it's like an uh, open to the public type of place where they have all their carcasses of meat outside in the open. And so that was a place like that. We went through that place to chant Hare Krishna, and this one really big guy, he came, grabbed me, and put his arms around me and put his uh, butcher's knife on my neck. And he was laughing, and he looked at his friends, and he said, "Should I cut his head off?" That actually happened. But Krishna protected me, and nothing really happened. Although it looked like it, I mean, he was serious. He grabbed me. He had his arm around my neck, and he had his knife on my neck. So sometimes, you have to tolerate such situations. Uh, but you have to have faith that Krishna will protect his devotee. So that happened a long time ago, but it actually happened. I'm not exaggerating at all. So when you go out into public and you chant Hare Krishna, well, you are taking a risk, no doubt about it, because there's all kinds of people. Some people are very nice, some people are very nasty. So you have to tolerate that and continue chanting. Even today, sometimes we're chanting in uh, different places where there might be a person who's drunk or a person who's actually crazy. Like there was this one guy, he threw a rock at our food truck and it broke the window. And it actually cost a lot of money to replace the window. And he was not arrested, but he was also breaking the windows of people's houses. You know, he's a crazy guy. So the police came and took him to jail. But after a week or two, he was out of jail again. The same guy, and I remember talking to a policeman. I said, "Look, this guy was just put into jail. Why did you let him out?" He said, "Well, can't we can't hold him. Uh, why? Because he didn't actually injure anyone. He was only breaking windows, and and he actually, uh, you know, threatened us and did break the window of our food truck, and it costs a lot to replace the food truck windows. They're expensive. So, and then after a couple of days, he was out in the street again. This time, he didn't try and break our window, but he was out again, and it was very surprising. I couldn't believe that they let him out again because he was crazy. But that for some reason or other, this. But after that, he never bothered us. Uh, so these are the risks you take in Krishna consciousness. But we have to have full faith that Krishna will protect us. So that day, when we went through a neighborhood where there were butchers, and they had, the carcasses of animals publicly visible, not necessarily inside a store, but they were publicly visible. And this one guy came, he grabbed me, put his arm around my neck, and put his knife on my neck, and was laughing. And he asked his friends, should I cut his head off? I remember that. And they were all joking. And actually, he let me go after maybe about 5 minutes. He let me go. So those are the risks that you have to take when you go out on Sankirtan. Okay, so we'll stop right there. Thank you very much. Oh, glories to Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Bol. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Hare Hare. Srila Prabhupada.